Welcome to our video. Have you ever stopped to wonder if your thoughts are always true? It's a question that might seem simple at first, but it can lead us down a fascinating path of self-discovery. We often take our thoughts for granted, assuming they're accurate representations of reality. But what if that's not always the case? What if some of our thoughts are misleading us, holding us back, or even causing unnecessary stress and anxiety? In this video, we're going to explore the idea that not everything we think is necessarily true. We'll look at how our thoughts shape our reality, why we tend to trust them automatically, and how we can learn to question them in a healthy, productive way. Our thoughts are incredibly powerful. They influence how we feel, how we behave, and how we perceive the world around us. When we have positive thoughts, we tend to feel good and act confidently. When our thoughts are negative, we might feel down or anxious, and we might hold ourselves back from opportunities. But here's the thing, our thoughts aren't always accurate reflections of reality. They're often influenced by our past experiences, our fears, our assumptions, and even by what we've been taught to believe. Sometimes, our brains create stories or interpretations of events that aren't entirely true. We might jump to conclusions, assume the worst, or see patterns that don't really exist. This tendency to trust our thoughts without question can lead us into thinking traps. These are patterns of thought that can distort our perception of reality and lead to negative emotions or behaviors. For example, we might engage in negative self-talk, telling ourselves we're not good enough or that we can't achieve our goals. We might overthink situations, analyzing them endlessly without coming to any useful conclusions. Or we might catastrophize, always imagining the worst possible outcome in any situation. Our brains have a natural tendency to fill in gaps in our knowledge with assumptions. It's a survival mechanism that helped our ancestors make quick decisions in potentially dangerous situations. But in our modern world, this habit can sometimes do more harm than good. We might assume we know what other people are thinking, or we might create elaborate scenarios in our minds about what might happen in the future. These stories our brains create aren't always accurate, and believing them without question can lead to unnecessary stress and anxiety. So how can we start to recognize when our thoughts might be leading us astray? One key is to become aware of unhelpful thought patterns. These might include always focusing on the negative aspects of a situation, making sweeping generalizations based on limited evidence, or assuming we know what others are thinking without any real proof. When we get caught up in these patterns, they can have a significant impact on our mood and behavior. We might feel more anxious, depressed, or angry than the situation really warrants. We might avoid taking risks or trying new things because our thoughts tell us we'll fail. Or we might push people away because we assume they don't really like us. One of the most important steps in learning to question our thoughts is understanding the difference between thoughts and facts. A thought is something that occurs in our mind, it's our interpretation or opinion about something. A fact, on the other hand, is something that can be objectively verified. For example, if we think I'm no good at public speaking, that's a thought, not a fact. It's our interpretation of our abilities, which might be influenced by past experiences, fear, or lack of confidence. The facts might be that we've given speeches before with mixed results, or that we feel nervous when speaking in front of groups. But these facts don't necessarily mean we're no good at public speaking. Learning to distinguish between thoughts and facts allows us to start questioning our assumptions. We can ask ourselves, is this thought really true? What evidence do I have to support it? Is there any evidence that contradicts it? There are several techniques we can use to challenge our thoughts. One is fact-checking. When we have a thought that's causing us distress, we can try to look at it objectively. What actual evidence do we have to support this thought? Is there any evidence that contradicts it? Another technique is to look for alternative explanations. If we're assuming something negative about a situation or person, can we think of other possible explanations that might be just as likely or even more likely? We can also practice considering the bigger picture. Often, our thoughts focus on one small aspect of a situation while ignoring other important factors. By stepping back and trying to see the whole context, we might realize our initial thought was overly simplistic or biased. Mindfulness is another powerful tool for working with our thoughts. Mindfulness involves observing our thoughts without judgment, rather than getting caught up in them or trying to push them away. It's like sitting on a riverbank, watching leaves float by on the water. We can see our thoughts in the same way, and noticing them as they arise, but not necessarily believing them or acting on them. This practice of mindful observation can help us create some distance from our thoughts. Instead of automatically believing and reacting to every thought that pops into our head, we can learn to see thoughts as mental events that come and go. This can give us more freedom to choose which thoughts we want to engage with and which ones we want to let pass by. There are many simple mindfulness exercises we can try. One is to simply sit quietly for a few minutes and notice our thoughts as they arise, without trying to change or judge them. Another is to focus on our breath or on physical sensations in our body, gently bringing our attention back whenever we notice our mind has wandered into thought. As we get better at recognizing and questioning unhelpful thoughts, we can start to work on replacing them with more balanced, realistic ones. This doesn't mean forcing ourselves to think positively all the time. That's not realistic or helpful. Instead, it's about finding a middle ground between overly negative thoughts and unrealistic positive ones. For example, if we catch ourselves thinking, "I always mess things up," we might challenge that thought by remembering times when we've succeeded. We might replace it with a more balanced thought like, "I make mistakes sometimes, just like everyone else, but I also have many successes." Building a more positive inner dialogue takes time and practice. It involves treating ourselves with the same kindness and understanding we would offer to a good friend. We can practice self-compassion, acknowledging our struggles without harsh self-judgment. As we learn to question our thoughts, we might find a new sense of freedom. We're no longer at the mercy of every negative or anxious thought that crosses our mind. Instead, we have the power to examine our thoughts, challenge them when necessary, and choose which ones we want to believe and act on. This process of questioning our thoughts can lead to significant personal growth. We might find ourselves becoming more resilient in the face of challenges, more open to new experiences, and more compassionate towards ourselves and others. We might experience less stress and anxiety as we learn to let go of unhelpful thought patterns. It's important to remember that questioning our thoughts doesn't mean we'll never have negative thoughts again. Thoughts are a natural part of how our brains work, and it's normal to have a mix of positive and negative thoughts. The goal is not to eliminate negative thoughts entirely, but to develop a healthier relationship with all our thoughts. We can start to see our thoughts as suggestions or possibilities rather than absolute truths. This allows us to consider them without automatically believing or acting on them. We can ask ourselves, is this thought helpful? Does believing this thought move me closer to or further from my goals? Learning to question our thoughts can have profound effects on our daily lives. We might find ourselves feeling more confident and capable at work. We might have more satisfying relationships as we learn to question assumptions and communicate more openly. We might feel more motivated to pursue our goals when we're not held back by limiting beliefs. It's also worth noting that while questioning our thoughts can be very beneficial, it's not a substitute for professional help if you're dealing with serious mental health issues. If you find that negative thoughts are significantly impacting your daily life, or if you're dealing with symptoms of anxiety or depression, it's important to seek support from a mental health professional. For those ready to start practicing thought questioning, there are several practical steps you can take. Start by simply noticing your thoughts throughout the day. You might want to keep a thought journal, writing down thoughts that stand out to you, especially ones that cause strong emotions or influence your behavior. Once you've identified some key thoughts, you can start to question them. Ask yourself, is this thought based on facts or assumptions? What evidence do I have for and against this thought? How would I view this situation if it were happening to a friend instead of me? Is this thought helpful? How does it make me feel and behave? What's a more balanced or realistic way to think about this situation? Remember, the goal isn't to force yourself to think positively all the time. It's about developing a more balanced, realistic perspective. Some negative thoughts are natural and even useful. They can alert us to potential problems or motivate us to make changes. The key is learning to distinguish between helpful and unhelpful thoughts, and not letting unhelpful thoughts control our lives. As you practice questioning your thoughts, be patient with yourself. This is a skill that takes time to develop. You might find it helpful to start with less emotionally charged thoughts and work your way up to more challenging ones. Celebrate small successes along the way. Even just noticing an unhelpful thought pattern is a significant step. You might also find it helpful to share this process with others. Talking about your thoughts with trusted friends or family members can provide new perspectives and support. You might even inspire others to start questioning their own thoughts too. Remember, your thoughts are a tool for understanding and navigating the world, but they're not always accurate. By learning to question them, you're not rejecting your own mind, you're learning to use it more effectively. You're developing a more nuanced, flexible way of thinking that can help you navigate life's challenges with greater ease and resilience. As we wrap up this video, let's recap the key points we've covered. We've explored how our thoughts shape our reality, but aren't always accurate reflections of it. We've looked at common thinking traps and how our brains create stories that aren't always true. We've discussed the importance of recognizing unhelpful thought patterns and understanding the difference between thoughts and facts. We've explored techniques for challenging our thoughts, including fact-checking, looking for alternative explanations, and considering the bigger picture. We've talked about the power of mindfulness in observing our thoughts without judgment, and strategies for replacing negative thoughts with more balanced ones. We've discussed how questioning our thoughts can lead to personal growth, increased happiness, and reduced stress. And we've provided some practical steps for starting to question your thoughts in daily life. Remember, the goal isn't to control every thought or to never have a negative thought again. It's about developing a healthier relationship with your thoughts, one where you can consider them critically rather than automatically believing everything that passes through your mind. So the next time you find yourself caught up in a whirlwind of thoughts, especially ones that are causing you distress, try to take a step back. Ask yourself, is this thought really true? Is it helpful? What would happen if I didn't believe it? You might be surprised at the insights and freedom that can come from this simple act of questioning. Thank you for joining us on this exploration of the power of questioning our thoughts. We hope you found it helpful and inspiring. Remember, your thoughts are a part of you, but they don't define you. By learning to question them, you're taking a powerful step towards greater self-awareness and personal growth. Here's to clearer thinking and a more balanced perspective on life.